Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, depending on where you are. I know we've got a global audience today. We can see that a few people are still joining, so we'll just give everyone a couple of minutes to join and then we'll start. For those just joining, we're just giving folks a couple of minutes to join us, as we can see the attendees are still going up. Okay, so hello again to those that have joined. Thanks for joining and welcome to today's webinar, Controlling Your Data in an Unpredictable Environment. We're delighted to have some fantastic speakers from IDC, from Union Bank and Sandz to share their insights with you. So my name is Rebecca Morgans. I head up international marketing for Zadara, and it's my pleasure to introduce our key speakers today. We have Andrew Smith, Research Manager, Cloud Infrastructure Services from IDC, who'll discuss how infrastructure spending is shifting to cloud and some of the growth factors and challenges of cloud infrastructure as a service. Morning, Andrew. It's very early for Andrew.
Thank you for having me.
We have Henry Aguda, Chief Technology Officer and Chief Transformation Officer at Union Bank, who's going to share with us Union Bank's digital transformation story and how Zadara and Sandz have enabled them to stay one step ahead of the competition. Good morning, Henry, or good afternoon for you, sir.
Good morning, good afternoon, good day, everybody.
Good day. And we also have Henry Velasco, who's Managing Director at Sandz, who's going to delve into some detail around delivering best practice managed services. We'll finish today's session with a panelist discussion, and then we'll have time for a Q&A session at the end. So if you have any questions you'd like to ask, please, if you would put them in the chat box, that would be great, and we'll share them at the end. Hope you all enjoy the session. I'll hand over now to Andrew.
Thanks, Rebecca, and hi, everybody. This is Andrew Smith. For the next kind of 10 to 15 minutes, I think my goal really is to go over storage as a service in the context of this market and some of the factors that have been driving adoption. When I talk about storage as a service, typically what I'm focused on is cloud-based compute storage resources delivered to customers. Storage as a service can mean different things to different organizations, different use cases, but I want to talk about some of the key factors, kind of so you know what it is when you see it type of thing, and how it might apply to your use case. I want to give you some market context in terms of what's growing, why it's growing, and then talk about over the past year. It's tough to talk about any market without factoring in the impact of COVID-19, how it's changing buyer behavior, how it's changing buyer expectations. We'll go a little bit into that related specifically to cloud-based storage. So first of all, what is enterprise storage as a service? How do you know it when you see it? IDC doesn't actually have a market for storage as a service. We have a market for cloud storage, cloud delivered storage, and cloud delivered compute. But really those are kind of, you could consider those the building blocks, the foundation of storage as a service. It typically encompasses on-premises and cloud delivery models, but it'll be solutions that deliver consumption storage capabilities in an OpEx model, right? Subscription-based billing. Typically, there's an element of flexibility in terms of usage, right? On-demand capacity, as well as the flexibility to increase or decrease that capacity based on the workload of the application being utilized. And then what's interesting, I think, in the context of this conversation too, is embedded data security, IT resilience capabilities, right? Things like deduplication, replication, encryption are all built into the service and automated in some form or fashion that helps kind of take that burden off of IT, off of internal IT. And then last thing is kind of the services delivery model has an inherent shared risk or shared interest to it, right? This is a provider guaranteeing SLAs around uptime, data access, performance, something that the buyer kind of depends on in terms of what they can guarantee and what they can expect from their service over time. So why does storage as a service matter? What is the context? Why is adoption growing? This is a slide I like to use a lot. It's kind of what I refer to as the IT, I guess you could call it the storage growth paradox, right? These two lines are meant to illustrate that in a pretty simple way. Essentially, what we typically see customer after customer we talk to, buyer after buyer, is dealing with the same problem in some fashion or another, which is that their enterprise data is growing, but their storage budget and their IT budget overall is kind of at a flat to declining rate. So typically we see enterprise storage capacity growing at 30%, 30 to 40% annually, but our IT buyer indexes show that kind of flat to declining growth of IT budget. So what do how that brings up the core challenge? How do you do more with less? How do you manage more data with the same or less budget? The answer is you have to kind of be more efficient. You have to rely on different types of spending, not having to put up as much capital outlay and maybe shift budget to on-demand usage as you need it. And these are kind of going back to the previous slide. Some of these questions can be addressed by storage as a service, and that's why it makes that type of solution relevant in to today's buyer, because they're dealing with this this paradox from one way or the other. So as a result, on the next slide, this is kind of getting a little bit into the market. This is what we're seeing is kind of a slow but significant shift away from, I shouldn't say away, but public cloud spending, the darker blue bar, you can see it kind of continue to creep up over time, and we expect the revenue from that segment to actually rival and exceed spending on traditional and private cloud infrastructure this year, potentially in 2021. So this is kind of giving you a little bit of a historic view, as well as future forecast trending as to where dollars have kind of shifted and where they're being spent. And we believe that the majority of, or not the majority, but buyer dollars are going to continue going towards public cloud IaaS solutions, as it fits kind of the expectations of buyers moving forward as they deal with the challenges of doing more with less, especially when it comes to compute and storage. And we can get, on the next slide, we can go a little bit more into some of the drivers. Oh, I think Rebecca, we're gonna do a quick.
Yeah, so just before Andrew shares some of the top drivers, we're keen to understand from the audience what your top 3 pain points for for cloud storage are. So if you would take a minute just to cast your votes and indicate what your top 3 pain points are, that would be great. And then we'll look at the results after the next IDC shot.
Yeah, and this will be good because it'll allow us to compare kind of our viewers a little bit of a snapshot against some of the data that IDC has been gathering.
Okay, should we take a look?
Yeah, let's check it out.
Okay, interesting.
All right,
so if
so
we
we've got
compare
cost, yeah, cost, regulatory requirements, and data capacity. Certainly among the top challenges that we see in our research too. I mean, typically regulation, security, data growth, and cost, all within the top, 5 to 6 challenges. We can go through we can compare this to some of the results that IDC's gathered from our IaaS View study. So this is an annual survey that we run from with about just over 1,000 buyers. This question is asking something similar: top 3 factors driving public cloud IaaS usage. At the top, we kind of have performance, security, access to data. Now, what we've seen, interesting, this relates to kind of the poll you guys have just taken too, is that as customer use cases mature, cost continuously goes down the list of challenges or the list of factors driving usage. I think the maturity, what's the word I'm looking for? The kind of steps that we see customers going through is cost is high at the outset when they're picking a vendor, but then as they start deploying their use cases, start deploying applications and mature their use case, it becomes about compliance, security, and some of those other factors that are away from kind of cost, CapEx, and TCO. So that's something to kind of keep in mind maybe as you're thinking about your use case, thinking about your deployment models. But hopefully these data points give you a quick view of kind of some of the factors driving public cloud IaaS usage today. And then on the next slide, this is, again, going back to the challenges. So you've got security, performance, cost of billing as the top 3. Security tends to dominate these types of questions when it comes to cloud compute and storage usage. I think it has always been a top concern and will always be a top concern, especially if you're an organization moving from on-premises to a multi-tenant environment to a cloud environment. There's always data and applications which are too critical to fail, have compliant data with special regulatory requirements that must be met, no downtime or data loss. And this kind of there will always be this element of hesitancy to move or manage those workloads to the cloud. But I think over time, what we see is kind of a hybrid approach, right? Where organizations move some workloads to cloud, keep others on premises, and then maybe manage the movement of those workloads back and forth. A lot of times we talk about it in terms of workload equilibrium, right? It's okay to have an expectation that things are going to move based on performance, security, or cost needs. It's just the best advice is to kind of plan for that data movement or that workload movement, right? Remain flexible in your approach to cloud storage and compute. So starting to wrap up here, what a little bit of market context on the past year, how COVID-19 impacted cloud storage and what it might mean for kind of your outlook on the market and your outlook on adoption if you're going down the path of cloud adoption. We've seen consistently over the year that enterprises are not changing their spending priorities due to COVID-19 when it comes to cloud. In fact, it's been a little bit of the opposite. As far as we can tell, organizations are using COVID-19 as a catalyst to drive digital transformation, drive cloud adoption. It's changed the way that a lot of these organizations work, right? Relying more heavily on e-commerce, having to have employees access physical locations in different ways, an influx of remote work, right? All of this is driving the need for new digital solutions that are flexible, accessible remotely, and a lot of times delivered via the cloud. So COVID-19 has actually acted as an accelerant to these markets, and just the graph on the chart is meant to kind of reinforce that. This is our public cloud IaaS forecast, and as you can see, you know, there's no U shape or V shape here. There's just kind of the continued growth of this market over time, and I think it's played out. You know, we've taken some criticism from this forecast over the past year, but we've kind of stuck to the fact that we expect it to remain strong despite what's happened over the past year, so remaining strong during 2021. And it's just kind of something I think that's counterintuitive, but has held true. So certainly a consideration as you're thinking about the health of this market over the next year. So I think with that, I will wrap up my segment and hand back to Rebecca. And of course, if you have questions about IDC, we'll be sending out the slides. It has details, and I think, Rebecca, it's worth highlighting. There's a full kind of spotlight paper that we've worked on together that has a lot of the trends, market dynamics that I've talked about illustrated in much more depth.
Thank you, Andrew. Yes, so we will be sending out the spotlight report and sharing that with you after the session. So Andrew alluded to the impact of COVID-19, and you know, the global pandemic has really brought into sharp focus the need to pivot and adapt quickly and effectively. Union Bank has really excelled at leveraging cloud services to deliver a truly customer-centric experience, and it's enabled them to really grow and remain competitive during this time. So I'm very excited to hand over to Henry Aguda now to share Union Bank's digital transformation story.
Thank you, Rebecca, and good day to everybody. So I'm glad that I'm in this session together with my two favorite industry partners, IDC for research and Zadara for the solutions that we use in the bank. To start off, Union Bank didn't wake up one day and decided to become a digital bank overnight. Our journey to becoming a digital bank started 21 years ago. Would you believe cloud wasn't prevalent then? And I guess a lot of people haven't predicted public cloud adoption would be at this rate. So 21 years ago, Union Bank started as the first transaction card called Ion that's tied up with the likes of PayPal or Visa. And then we were the first on the web. In fact, Union Bank was a Hall of Famer in the old Webby Awards in the Philippines, where they award companies with innovative use of the internet back then. And you know, as the cell phone started becoming smarter and smarter, Union Bank moved in pace with the technology. And we also launched the first internet hub for government transactions. But 4 years ago, we said we need to take it to a different level. But taking it to a different level, we decided we'll lay down more robust digital infrastructure. So we started by putting up a blueprint, no less than a standard industry architecture from the IAN. So we mapped out in architectural layers our technology, our application, our processes, as well as our risk overlay. Then we decided most of our processes will be automated. We deployed business process automation tools and RPAs. We decided that to be flexible, we need to be able to stitch all of our systems through RESTful APIs. And of course, as you collect all of this information and connect all the systems, you need strong data analytics in order for you to mine the insights that you can get from the huge amount of data that you'll be generating as you move from physical to digital. So we lay down the foundation, but not everything is about technology. One of our five foundational elements is our culture. In fact, I love using this picture. It shows our former chairman, Tito Ortiz, who at the time of the transformation actually led the organization in his mantra of think, rethink, and then learn, relearn, and then learn again. This is him trying to learn C programming. He's programming an Arduino box. So he's a very accomplished banker. And within a day, he said he'll take up the challenge of learning how to code. And he did. Around him were 20 of our top executives in the bank. And kudos to the culture of Union Bank. Everybody embraced the new way of doing stuff. He hasn't taken up programming nor coding, but he's our primary advocate and ambassador for new technology. So we had our culture transformed. We looked at our processes. We said we have to move much, much faster. So we went from waterfall to agile. And just during the pandemic, we said we need to move much faster. So we re-engineered our processes to comply with DevSecOps. So our aspiration is to launch every 2 weeks to 120 releases every month. So you could just imagine how busy our IT and operations people are, and how creative right now our product people are, churning out products after products. So having been able to lay down the foundation, both for our culture and for our technical blueprint, we embarked on converting our physical space to virtual space. So we started with our Eon offering, which is a first in the banking industry for selfie banking. Moving on to creating more digital channels, we launched our first chatbot, which is the first in the Philippines 3 years back. This actually unloaded a lot of the calls to our call center and moved it to the chatbot. We launched our award-winning, famous Convergent Union Bank Online that allowed during the pandemic for our customers to open an account, put in money, disperse money, pay bills, while at the comfort of their homes. They didn't have to go to any of our branches or ATMs to do that. Then we proceeded to launch several other platforms that cater to the corporate and to the SMEs. That journey actually, talking about paradox earlier, when Andrew was talking about you have to keep the budget, while the budget are flat, the demand and storage is becoming exponential. And this is our infrastructure then. Union Bank was heavy into cloud transformation already. We've moved to the public cloud. But as our infrastructure started to grow to meet the demand, we encountered another paradox. It's no longer the paradox of budget and increasing demand, but as we grow and as demand increases, our systems become more and more complex. So now suddenly you have to manage on-premise, off-premise, hybrid cloud, name it. We have almost all the variants of storage facilities in our data centers. And the problem is, as a system becomes more complex, while the business demands you to move faster, you actually slow down. Complexity introduces a lot of breaks in the process. So we went to the market and scanned the solutions that are available that would allow us to have cost efficiency, simplicity, at the same time, ultimately agility in the way we deliver our services. Our mantra is you can only be as fast as your infrastructure. So if your infrastructure bugs you down, there's no way you'd be able to deploy and implement the projects that you need to during the pandemic. So we reached out to our partner Sandz and Sandz partner Zadara, and we changed our infrastructure to implement Zadara solution. The nice thing about Zadara solution is it has a mix of flash arrays for critical and premium performance for services that we offer to the public. And it has a tiering factor that allows us to move low demand, low value data into lower tier storage devices, allowing us to be more cost efficient. At the same time, giving us the flexibility to move flow seamlessly through on-premise and on off-premise cloud, and allows us to be able to manage them efficiently and with a lot of simplicity. So having attained that level of operational excellence in our infrastructure, Union Bank continued to deploy and implement groundbreaking projects that addressed a lot of the issues during the pandemic. So we were the first, prior to the pandemic, we were already the first transform branch operations in the country. In fact, we branded it as the ARC. When customers hated to line up in the branches or to go to the branches for transaction, our customers love going to our branches. You see pictures of the car. We've sold anywhere from cars to furniture to toys. So this is a transformed bank branch, ranked one of the top financial branches in the world, actually. We were able to do this because of the infrastructure that we have. Beyond the branch space, we launched several digital channels. So the first one is our online mobile banking app. You can just imagine the amount of customers that we've been able to onboard in this app during the pandemic, because they can just download the app, take a selfie of themselves, take a selfie of their KYC, and they're ready to transact like any bank account that you can use for operate as an operating account. There's a statistic actually that we used to onboard 2,000 customers per month. During the pandemic, and because of this app, we were launching anywhere between 2,000 to 5,000 customers a day. So that's a step increase in terms of the magnitude of customers that we're onboarding. At the same time, you could just imagine the horror of our IT organization when they found out that our capacity would just go through the roof. Luckily, we have a flexible storage infrastructure that allows us to scale on demand without huge upfront capital expenditure. Then we also recently launched our Union Bank portal, which is now the go-to app for corporates and businesses. And just of late, we launched our SME banking app, the go-to app now for small and medium enterprises in the Philippines. So you can just imagine these three super apps deployed in the market in the Philippines right now will just fill up the storage capacity that we have right now. Currently, we have around 150 terabytes in storage, and we're confident that as it gets filled up, it will just grow together with the demand, and still continue to allow us to launch systems that will. Beyond the apps that we've launched, because of the infrastructure we have, we were able to also pursue new initiatives in the area of artificial intelligence. And filling up your infrastructure with data, the next logical step would be to mine the data for analysis. And then, since you have enough data, you can now pursue an AI initiative that can be filled up with a lot of information. So we're scaling up our chatbot. We have our AI-assisted retail relationship managers through Max. And yes, we do have a live robot right now. There's actually several of them roaming around our branches that can easily access information from from a central database. So imagine you as a Union Bank customer going to our branches, any of the Eve robots would have information about all of your transaction and can anticipate the other transactions that you would want to do. So AI initiatives will just increase our demand and our need for more storage. Beyond AI, we've actually tapped blockchain. And yes, we're using blockchain to interconnect rural banks. That's a project called I2I. We have blockchain interconnecting the logistics space, blockchain on financial supply chain. We even have a blockchain for identity management. And even our general circulars and rules are on blockchain. And blockchain actually is a mechanism that fills up a lot more storage than we have imagined before. We wouldn't have been able to have the confidence to deploy such solutions if we didn't think our infrastructure can accommodate them. Next would be beyond the blockchain experiments that we have. We've actually launched other projects. This one is something that we're excited about. This one during the pandemic, where people cannot leave their areas due to quarantine, we bring the bank to them. For those who have mobile access to mobile and broadband devices, they can download our app and transact. But for some areas in the Philippines, like in the rural places where bandwidth is problematic, we deploy what we call the bank on wheels. This is a full-blown operating bank powered by a 5G network that allows us to deploy 4 ATMs and a full-blown branch facility. Was very, very useful during the pandemic, where we had to assist the government in providing amelioration or financial aid to people who are in need. Beyond the bank on wheels, if you go through this slide right now, you can see that we're a full service bank just by downloading our app and people transacting anywhere from even taking a picture of your check, depositing the check, to disbursing funds throughout the rural areas, because we now were able to grow from a few hundred cash out centers to 15,000 cash out centers in a matter of 2 months. I'm saying those statistics because the normal process would be you'll have a capacity plan prepared for your IT organization, and your IT organization will prepare for a capital expenditure plan. And by the time the pandemic is done, that's the only time you're ready to deploy the things that you need. But in our case, whatever the business thinks of that will require immediate deployment and would have to scale very fast, our IT organization is confident that they can service the requirements. And part of that is because we have an infrastructure that doesn't become complicated as you grow. In fact, it becomes much easier to manage as it scales, and it allows us for more efficiency in that way. Because of all of this, this is a chart that shows that Union Bank was ranked #2 as most helpful bank in Asia Pacific. And a lot of the things that we were able to do for the public wouldn't have been possible if it weren't for the strong collaboration of our culture in Union Bank, our strong IT support, and the infrastructure from which our IT organization relies on to deploy the services. So, some people may say storage as a service is something that's left for the data center people or for the IT organization. If deployed properly and if deployed well, it actually becomes an essential part of any transformation journey. It's an essential component because you're only as fast as your infrastructure, but there are also other things that you can build on top of it. I guess the rule of thumb is for everything that you put in your transformation journey, you have to make sure that everything as they scale won't slow you down. And in Zadara, we found the best mix of efficiency, scalability, and agility. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you, Sir Henry. Yeah, Union Bank it's an inspiring success story, and I think your AI initiatives are a great example of the value in your data once it's unleashed. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. Happy to do it.
So Zadara has been proudly partnering with Sandz for the last 5 years to enable customers to realize the value in their data and realize business growth through cloud services. So I'm happy to hand over to Henry Velasco, who's going to share with you a solution to today's unprecedented data management challenges. Thank you, Henry.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Rebecca. Good afternoon for those who are actually listening in the Philippines, and good morning or good evening, especially for our global friends and customers and partners in Europe. I want to thank Andrew Smith as well as my tokayo, Henry Aguda. I've never heard such a very good customer testimonial until now. Thank you very much, Henry. Thank you very much. So I'll be the last presenter for this afternoon. But before that, if you can go back to the first slide, Rebecca. So what I plan to do is basically, just like my title says, is that it's about enterprise control and cloud agility. What I like to share with you is basically to show you the convenience of an on-prem storage plus cloud economics and the benefits that you'll get out of that, and provide you with some insights and primarily to address the pain points. So it was good, those quick poll. So hopefully we'll be able to address, and I think I'm very confident that Zadara business model will be able to address the pain points, the top 3 pain points that was highlighted during the quick poll about regulation and compliance, data growth, which is always growing, and high cost related to that. And basically, because of the public cloud, there are concerns about security. But before that, I'd like to give a brief presentation of Sandz Solutions, especially for those people who have not heard of us, so that we could give you who we are and what we do best. So we've been in business. We've been in this part of the region for 20 years right now, operating across mostly South Asia with headquarters in Singapore. Before the pandemic, I used to travel every other week in other cities like Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, as well as Thailand. But right now, I'm really pretty much grounded for almost a year right now. We started as a service provider, systems integrator and a reseller of tier 1 enterprise storage like EMC, HPE. That's the reason why storage is actually in our DNA. But 7 years ago, sometime 2013, we pioneered, locally at least, we pioneered managed services by offering business continuity and data protection around backup and disaster recovery, but delivered as a fully managed service. So when we met Zadara sometime late 2016 with their storage as a service model, we thought it was a natural fit in able to extend our offering, get more customers, at the same time to complement our existing business, especially our backup and a DR. And basically, it allows us to stop, investing on those expensive storage and made our offer much more competitive. Market-wise, we have a very narrow focus on the enterprise and data center. That's why we are actively in the midst of the shift or the transformation at the enterprise, like what's happening in Union Bank, as they embark in modernizing their infrastructure, data, and application. And just like what Andrew shared with us earlier, is that the COVID-19, somehow flattened or if not decreased the budget, but somehow it's accelerated digital transformation, or at least a catalyst. So the partnership that we had with Zadara has made the transformation journey together with our customers a lot easier and much more exciting. Next slide, please. So what you see here in this slide are Zadara's 3 fundamental pillars. So since its founding in 2011, so 9 years ago, they've been in business already for 9 years, the founders actually wanted to position their offering to be an enterprise storage, but delivered purely as a service, actually started in the public cloud. It should be able to be at par or equal, if not better, right, than most traditional enterprise storage like EMC and HPE. In addition to that, they wanted to have all of the enterprise features that you expect from your enterprise storage, like what you see here in the left pillar: large core, big memories, flash, hard drives, encryption, etc., etc. So those are all done. But in addition to be able to compete or go to toe-to-toe with these storage vendors, Zadara actually would like to exceed or excel in 2 key areas. So as we move to the right, so from the first line of code, okay, Zadara wanted the storage to be fully elastic. So it should be able to flex in 2 dimensions. When I say flex in 2 dimensions, users should be able to expand and contract capacity and performance on the fly. So most storage allows you to actually flex by adding capacity, but contracting, in most cases, in general, they don't allow you to do that. So that is really a big plus factor with the Zadara business model, and that's basically saves you a lot of cost. At the same time, it's not only what they call this storage that you'll be able to flex up and down, but also on performance. And this is, I think, something very unique to Zadara, including performance. So for example, if we ship to you 150 terabytes of storage in your location, and you only consume 50 terabytes, so you only pay for we only charge you for the 50 terabytes, or what we call pay by the drink. The rest of the 100 terabytes will just be sitting in the wings, ready to go anytime. So let's say suddenly, like what Henry Aguda said, they didn't expect some surge or actually increase in the usage of their digital channel, or basically you're entering a what you call a peak demand, and you need to ingest more data during this period. So capacity and performance is always available, because we guarantee at least 30% over provision. So it will be in your location, in your data center, but you're not paying for it. And it is an over provision of the right mix, making sure that those resources that we deploy in your data center are something that you would use. I'll give more example on that one. So, but let's say after a certain period, if the peak demand has lapsed or has expired, you can still crank it down or even hibernate unused resources, saving you tons of money. Hibernate means you can actually shut down the controller of those storage, especially for operations which are not operating 24 hours a day. Let's say back office, financial, etc., so that you don't have to pay for unused resources. Again, that's a plus, right, compared to other general purpose storage. We also another plus that I like to mention here is that we also provide periodic upgrade of the hardware and software for free to keep your storage in step with the latest technology. So for example, we are currently upgrading the switches, which are actually 40 gig Mellanox switches, to 100 gig Mellanox switches. right? So high performance Ethernet switches will now be deployed on our existing customers, which are actually only under subscription for maybe 2 or 3 years, right? So we don't have to wait for 5 years or 10 years to really upgrade those machines. Some of our customers are actually requesting that we replace their current flash with NVMe flash, which are much faster and much cheaper. And another plus is that we do this with almost zero or minimal disruption. And we call this actually storage immortality. So it's always up and running. That's the reason why Zadara is one of those few companies who are able to put a guarantee on those SLA. Now, you try to compare this with traditional on-prem storage, they cannot really be scaled down. And performance is fixed depending on the rigid appliance that you purchase, and the storage will remain the same for that period. If you actually sign up for 3 years leasing, 5 years leasing, or your life cycle is about 5 years, that machine will never really change. And then at the end of the life cycle, right, it will reach an end of life. You need to do a refresh, forklift upgrade, migration of data, which is costly, complex. At the same time, it's very risky. Now, last but not the least of those areas where Zadara would like to excel and exceed is that we wrap this up, Zadara wrap this up with a proactive 24/7 fully managed services. Proactive meaning down the road, right? If we see something about to happen that will cause some disruptions or downtime to your operations, we fix it right away. So a simple things like if we see that you're running out of volume, etc., your volume is getting filled up with data, we just increase it right away. Okay, and these are the same people who develop. So expert management means these are the same people who develop the storage manned by 4 network operating centers around the world, basically following the sun. So that's the way they guaranteed. If you go to their website, they're one of those few companies and put it in writing that able to guarantee 100% SLA. Of course, given the condition that you will allow us to monitor not your data, but the entire infrastructure. So that's Zadara's genesis from day one, fully featured, fully elastic, and fully managed. Next slide, please. So everybody has a secret sauce, and here's Zadara's secret sauce. So Zadara's storage is based on the award-winning patent software called BPSA, which stands for Virtual Private Storage Array. So every BPSA is actually a storage array. It is actually based on software-defined architecture running on top of high-performance x86 servers. It was designed to be a multi-tenant, multi-architecture, but each tenant actually remains private. So the BPSA, which are array in itself, will have their own dedicated resources. Just like your traditional array, they will have a controller, maybe a cache, flash, hard drive, and own network. So the best testament of its privacy, like I said, it's a multi-tenant. You can run as many BPSA as you want, like what Henry shared with us a while ago, the flexibility of that one. But each tenant, each BPSA is actually a private. And the best testament of that privacy is, like I said a while ago, is you can hibernate the controller of that BPSA, especially for non-24 hours operation. You cannot do that on a non-multi-tenant, I mean, a non-multi-tenant, what you call storage, because the other users or the other what you call business unit or other customers, if you are a service provider, which actually sharing those disks will be very much affected. So that's another plus as far as Zadara is concerned. And then you can provision, like I said, as many BPSA as you want. And then BPSA, it's a multi-architecture. It can have any type of data, any protocol, any location. So it's location agnostic. So BPSA can be block, file, or object storage running on the same physical infrastructure. So actually eliminating those storage silos. So a good example, one of our biggest clients, right? They're actually, I think right now, we have already deployed about 2 petabytes of storage, right? We started actually about 3 years ago. They just signed up another 3 years extension. about 400 terabytes with 6 storage nodes, and the composition of those storage, that 400 terabyte, is 60% flash and 40% hard drive. Before Zadara, they have standard storage array, enterprise storage arrays of various models, and they have 21, right? 21 spread across 2 data centers. Now, with Zadara, we're able to reduce the footprint from 21 to 2 to 3 racks, right? And basically, and still running about 20 plus BPSAs as we speak right now. So that's tons of savings in co-locations costs, or what we call space, power, and cooling. So that's one way to reduce what we call is the cost. It's not only on the per gig, per hour, etc., but also on the operations. So another example is that what they did is that they can also configure, let's say, a BPSA, right, as an all-flash array, so that you don't need to purchase dedicated all-flash array. It only adds to the silo, and then a lot of idle capacity sitting idle in there. Or you can use high volume and lower cost object storage, BPSA, for your backup and archiving. And I think this is what Henry Aguda and the Union Bank people are actually seeing, right? Being able to tier data across high performance, low latency applications, and when they don't need that, they can actually move it and tier it to lower cost, high capacity. So over a span of 4 years, since we partnered with Zadara in 2016 in the Philippines, we help customers get out of that rigid, very rigid 3 to 5 years CapEx cycle, constant migration, and downtime. And since this is a fully managed service, you can deploy your people to do more strategic tasks, managing infrastructure. There's nothing transformational about that, etc. Right? So the bottom line here is that BPSA can dramatically reduce storage silos, if not totally eliminated, deliver lots of cost savings to the company. Our current customers are saying that they're actually seeing 50%, up to 50% or more lower TCO compared to traditional capex or financing way of purchasing storage. Next slide, please. So last year, in addition to the storage as a service, this is a new service that we are actually introducing right now in the market. Last year, we've introduced a new service called Zadara Compute, and it will sit on top of our storage as a service. It is a private cloud, right? And basically, you will say private cloud is already what they call is a very crowded market with various hyper-converged saying this is their private cloud, either running their own hypervisor like Acropolis from Nutanix, or most of them are actually offering, if not a KBN, it's basically running the traditional VMware that we are all familiar with. So the main advantage or feature that we have on our private cloud is that it is 100% API compatible with AWS, and it's really purpose-built. The intention is a purpose-built for IT teams committed to delivering a public cloud experience on-premise. So just like AWS, you will be enabled to provision an EC2 compatible cloud within your data center or to an edge or even a remote location, especially for countries where there are no AWS region like the Philippines. So that addresses somehow the compliance, data sovereignty, which are actually part of the pain points. So with this, you can effectively address and eliminate egress and egress costs. So that's the cost that we have in the public cloud. Performance issues because it is closer to the data, and like I said, compliance and regulatory concerns. At the same time, while still championing your organization's cloud adoption. So the feature that you see in this slide is what you normally expect from a public cloud experience: self-service, predefined and fully customizable EC2 instances. So if you look at our slides, if you look at Zadara's website, and when we what we call this, do a proof of value, you will see that the EC2 sizes, medium, large, small, etc., are pretty much the same as AWS. So we'll be rolling out more services in the future, like database as a service, especially to manage, especially if you don't have a good DBA administrator. So database as a service will take out the pain of managing a database. And then container as a service as well as Kubernetes, so that you can actually start modernizing your application from those monolith to actually microservices. So I suggest you watch out more for Zadara's announcement in the near future. Next slide, please. So to wrap up, this is my last slide, is that with the new Zadara compute, network, and storage, we now offer a complete cloud experience on-prem, following the same agile and fully managed model. So this new offering allows you to deploy, again, across any locations that you want. It could be an on-prem, it could be a hybrid to your managed service provider, or even a multi-cloud. Remember, nothing is a one-size-fits-all, and multi-cloud is actually not a destination, but what we normally call best execution venue or best experience, similar to what Henry is doing in Union Bank. They run it on-prem, they run it on the cloud, whichever actually fits the demand right now or the requirement. But the trend that we are seeing right now, even though Andrew said, while the budget is flat, they can see, the adoption to the cloud is increasing. And we've seen that, companies like Microsoft, Azure, Apple are actually reporting, despite the COVID-19, which has affected a lot of companies, are actually reporting record revenues and record profit. But what we're seeing right now, despite all of these billions of dollars in prediction that cloud will just continue to grow, there will be tons and tons of on-prem. That's the reason why a lot of these hypercloud has also actually introduced their on-prem, Azure with their Azure Stack, AWS with the Outpost, etc. So the trend that we are seeing, that there will be still a lot of on-prem deployment because of the pain points that you just, you all mentioned: compliance, security, latency. And what we're seeing actually is repatriation of data from public cloud back to on-prem. And I think we're looking at one application that Union Bank is running on AWS, and they're basically seeing a lot of cost. We call this actually cloud hangover, right? So after consuming too much cloud, it is like the hangover experience after a night of revelry with too much alcohol, and that's going to happen, right? So in my 30 years in IT, I've never seen a company like Zadara, which is actually very customer-centric. That's why their success, our success, my success, my son's success as a service provider is always tethered to your success. So thank you very much. That's the end of my presentation. Next slide would be, if you have any question, right, and you want to have a deeper discussion on what we've seen, we also offer proof of value, some POC, etc., etc. All you need to do is contact Sandz. You can email us at marketing@sandz.com. I'm going to hand this over now to Rebecca. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Henry. I'd like to invite the rest of our speakers back, and we've got a couple of panel discussion questions to pose to you. So first of all, I think I'd like to pose this one to Henry Aguda to start us off, please. So Henry, digital transformation, what would you say are the most important factors to consider in order to deliver a good customer service, or a customer experience rather?
That's a good question, Rebecca. So first is the culture of the organization. So you cannot deliver good customer experience if the people are not oriented towards customer centricity. So that's what we work on a lot and continue to do so in Union Bank. And I think we're there as our culture become more and more customer centric. Just to give you an idea, no project gets approved unless the project proponent can start off his presentation from the viewpoint of the customer. So if the proponent cannot even articulate what the customer is going to experience with the project, it doesn't get approved. Second is, that culture is definitely important. But I've seen a lot of organizations also where they have the fantastic culture to service customers. And I know there have been very strong brands here in the Philippines that have been known for customer service. But during the pandemic, when it hit, that's when their infrastructure got tested. And sometimes you also need to have the technology foundation to be able to execute the customer centricity that you aspire for. So if your infrastructure is not flexible, well, the surveys bear out what Andrew showed, what people are looking for IaaS services, and on point with what Henry V mentioned earlier. If an infrastructure is not flexible or agile enough for you to deploy what you need to provide to your customers, and if it's too expensive, then no amount of good intention will translate to good service. So you need to have the right culture, then the right foundational infrastructure.
Yeah, it does. It needs to be a customer first approach to designing your services. But yes, quite, if there isn't the infrastructure to support that, you're limited. Is that, are those sort of factors something that you'd reflect, Andrew?
He's on mute.
Yes, Andrew, you're on mute.
Thank you. But yeah, absolutely. Just the only thing I would add is customer centricity, both internally and externally, right? From the buyer and the vendor perspective. Infrastructure buyers are looking for that same thing. It's, non-disruptive upgrades. They care about their experience of using the infrastructure that ties into their constituents, whether it's helping an operational group within their company, or even if they're tying that all the way to what it means for the customer using an application, interacting with the business. It's so important today. It kind of permeates the entire life cycle. So yeah, I think Henry put it well.
Henry V, are you finding many customers are coming to you to solve challenges with that kind of digital transformation as an overarching driver to what they're looking for in their infrastructure?
Yeah. Basically, like I said, like what Andrew said, right? Despite the COVID-19, the digital transformation is just becoming a catalyst. So we're seeing, I wouldn't say a lot, at least on our customer side, but a large enterprise are actually modernizing their application, and they're focusing more on customer centricity more than internal optimization. Because that's basically what gives value to the enterprise, right? Bringing in more customers, especially at this time right now, right? I mean, customer centricity is basically, I think, one of the all these important priorities of in digital transformation. So, yes, and most of their applications are still legacy monolith. So we've seen them break, those monolith, use a lot of API like what Henry is doing here, etc. So I'm not surprised about what Henry did. That's why he's #1 digital bank in the world right now. Really amazing, really amazing.
It is. It certainly is. Yeah, I think that customer-centric approach is something, a feeling we all share. Okay, so Henry V, perhaps following on, what advice would you give to those organizations who are just starting their digital transformation journey? I mean, obviously there's a lot to consider, and it's much further reaching than just the infrastructure, but that obviously is a core component.
Yeah, I'll try my best to answer this one. I'm not a consultant, and I've not had any personal experience going through this one other than being able to do this together with our client. But if I may, I think, if you're starting out, it's better to start small, right? Don't be too aggressive or to be ambitious, and basically have a clear definition of your objective, whether that's an internal optimization or an external focus like product centricity or customer centricity. And then try to form, so it's cultural, like what Henry and Andrew said, form a cross-matrix team, including an external, possibly a consultant if there are no expertise within. And then it has to be driven from the top, right? They have to be buy-in from the top all the way down. So I think those are some of the advice I can have in somebody starting with a digital transformation. Do a pilot, let's say, and then improve from there.
Henry A, I mean, you said in your presentation that your digital transformation journey actually started many years ago, but has sort of really come to fruition latterly. I mean, these thoughts that you share, you know, from starting out and from ensuring that your own journey was a success. So what, you know, what sort of key success factors, I suppose?
Well, yeah. So I guess the key success factor there is the way you look at transformation. So in Union Bank, as I've said, we started 21 years ago. We're not yet done. We're still going to be transforming 5 years from now, and maybe beyond. So transformation is a way of life. You have to continuously evolve and move with the times. And key there is the partner ecosystem that you have should also be of the same mindset. In the past with Union Bank, we went from mainframe to open source to, as Henry V mentioned earlier, we have this hangover of the public cloud. Then we're calibrating back. So I think the key there is movement. Always move forward. Nothing stays in place, and your best performance is yet to come. Always. So in Union Bank, we have this notion of MAGIS: do more, do better, do greater. For obvious reasons, once you get too complacent with something, you stand still. So that's our key. We keep moving. We're proud of saying we started 21 years ago, and we're also proud of saying that we're not yet done. We're still moving forward.
Hence it is a journey. Yeah, and having to constantly evolve and adapt and be agile to respond to market needs. Yeah, thank you. So I think we've got one more question, which, Andrew, if I can pose this to you to start with. So one of the main perceived concerns is still around as a service offerings posing a threat with, you know, data security breaches. How would you address these kinds of concerns?
Yeah, and I think this, when we were going through the slides, you know, security, compliance are typically some of the top challenges. They're perennial. I think there'll always be challenges associated with cloud adoption. And so it's interesting, when we talk to buyers about this, security is a concern, right? But what type of security concerns are they? And typically it's things that are out of the hands of both the provider and the enterprise that scare buyers the most. So malicious attacks, right? These are things that are kind of unknowns. Having a storage provider be able to see the customer's data, that's typically high on the list of security concerns. Less so are things like data loss and downtime. I think that's just a kind of part of the maturity of the market, right? These things are, customers can really count on having a resilient underlying infrastructure and architecture. I guess the recommendation, going back to what Henry V said about starting small and doing proof of concepts, right? These are things that buyers can test with the vendor, whether it's the type of encryption that they're using, the permissions that can be set on data, even the type of workload, right? Starting with an object storage workload that doesn't require tons of accessibility or low latency, you know, doing an archival workload, moving that to cloud and seeing, you know, these are the types of proofs of concept, kind of small bites that you can take on your journey that might not have huge security implications, that help enterprises understand, you know, what the expectations are in the cloud in a realistic way.
Yeah, Henry, how did you manage the the sort of challenges, or just ensure that you were entirely confident with the data security issue?
Oh, with Union Bank, Rebecca. So I agree with Andrew in this observation that a lot of the security concerns are beyond the control of most of the vendors. I mean, how do they control nation actors for one, and how do they control consumer-based fraud? In our case, we just have to make sure that we're always vigilant, and we do a stringent vulnerability assessment. And that's why it's very important you do your diligence as well in terms of selecting the as a service provider. And I do agree with the question that was asked. Security is a big issue for as a service providers, but then that's why you apply your due diligence. You have to make sure that you vet the provider well, and point there is even the big ones suffer security issues. Nobody's absolved of that. You just have to not overdo it, because if you overdo it, you'll just be too paranoid and not be able to move at all, but also not be careless. So it's a balance of not shutting everybody out, but also checking the ones that you partner with.
Great, thank you. I know that we are past the hour. We do have a couple of questions from the audience just to consider. So first of all, someone has asked, I consult with an organization that grew very rapidly from a small entrepreneur to a multi-site 500 plus employee organization. To convince the management to go digital, what is the one argument you would make with them? So I guess we can look at this a number of ways. Henry Agudo, I mean, obviously you've realized a lot of success and benefits from such an approach. And Henry Velasco, you can give your thoughts on this from a solution provider perspective.
Yeah. So if I can go first, Rebecca. So if I were faced with that question, where, hey, we're growing very fast, do we go digital? My answer is the only way you can sustain your growth is if you go digital. The whole world is going digital. More so after the pandemic. Nobody's going back to how it was before. It's the new digital normal. And I'll congratulate anybody whose business nowadays are growing very fast. But it will stop growing if you don't adapt new ways of doing stuff. Digital gives you efficiency, allows you scalability, and to some degree, it is your sustainability factor.
Thank you. Thank you. Henry V, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, just basically, like I said, it depends also on which segment you are. If you are in retail, basically, right, then definitely without e-commerce, you're not going to survive, right? You're not going to survive, even though there are a lot of disruptions here. Even in the bank right now, even though you're big, small bank, you can see the fintech, right, putting a wedge between you and the customer, etc. Even though you're a traditional, let's say, real estate, right? They don't really have to be digital. You still have to, have some digital, at least if it's not customer facing, at least operational efficiency, etc. Right? So, I mean, there's no way you could, just be the way you are. Otherwise, you'll stagnate, right? So, yep.
Thank you.
Can't hear you.
I'm sorry, I muted myself somehow there. Question for Henry V. So this is around the Z Compute. What is the minimum commitment to subscribe on this service?
Well, it depends on the initial deployment that we have, right? We normally on the Z Compute we start with four nodes basically, and 2 nodes for the storage. So there's a floor price. It could be as low as less than $2,000, etc. So it's a minimum. It's like what they call this. What would be a good? It's like a prepaid, right? It's like a prepaid. You have or a postpaid, right? You have a plan, right? Anything that you consume below that, you still have to pay for that minimum. And then if you actually do more web surfing, you travel, you have a lot of what they call this other expenses, and then you just top it up. But in most enterprise, like I said, right, that actually doesn't come into play, right? I mean, what can you really do with about, let's say, $2,000 a month, right? That's not a lot. So it's a very, very minimum cost. It's basically just to not even recover the cost that we are deploying on-prem. Okay, because there is an on-prem. This is not like the one that you put on the cloud. So basically, to address concerns about security, we put this the entire stack, including over provision within your firewall, right? Within those 4 firewalls. So that's basically the kind of security concerns that we can address. So the control that I mentioned a while ago.
Thank you. Another question coming in here. So again, around Z Compute. So how does Z Compute compare to? Another one's just popped in and it's disappeared. How does Z Compute compare against the offerings from AWS, Azure, and other hyperscalers? Well,
like I said, it's an EC2 API compatible with AWS. So if you look at side by side, right, you go to our website right now, or we can show it to you. Those sizes that you normally, if you are an experienced AWS user, exactly the same. I think we have more smaller increments, much smaller increments to keep the cost low. So it's exactly the same, the extra small, etc. I'm not too familiar with the terms, but basically what you see are the same. But our advantage, we are more cost effective. First of all, there's no ingress and egress cost, etc. Right? So all of those additional costs that you normally experience in the public cloud are not here, but exactly the same. Like I said, it's 100% API compatible. Those contracts and primitives are exactly the same.
One more. This is an interesting one. So what kind of cloud is best suitable for government offices?
You want me to answer that?
If you wouldn't mind, Henry.
Like I said, I've been covering several countries before the pandemic. In fact, one of the largest recent Zadara win in one of the government agencies in this region. I will not name it because it's not yet referenceable. Is because most of the government, what we call this, around this region, they don't want anything outside of their territory. So there's always what they call this data sovereignty. So we just installed, basically, we just got a 3-year contract for 62 petabytes. So the best, what they call this, the best, whether you have a data sovereignty, compliance, etc., what we're going to deliver to you is basically a cloud experience, which is on-prem, right? So that's the best, what they call this, infrastructure as far as storage and compute is concerned for the government. Right? It is under your control, etc. If you don't have a data center, we can always co-locate it, but it is within the boundaries of the Philippines or any country that you operate.
Yeah, I would just add on to what Henry's talking about. It's an interesting question. It's almost like any of the cloud IaaS providers are good for government, but it's the local services providers who add so much value to the type of industry that you're in, to the geography you're in, right? It's almost the larger players, you know, they're providing, they all have kind of meet the standards of what compliance and government agencies might need, but then to tailor the solution in any way becomes heavily reliant on those managed services providers. And we see this in the market. Those are the ones who are really driving the growth on the ground, helping with regional requirements.
Thanks, Andrew, for adding that. That's yeah, that was an interesting question. And that wraps up the questions, and I appreciate those that have stayed on for the extra time. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and your insight. It's been really interesting, great discussion. We will be following up with all of our attendees with just the research report, as we mentioned earlier, and also a survey. It's important to us to get your feedback and your insight as to whether this has been useful to you, if we can help you further. You can either scan the QR code there, or we'll send you the link in a follow-up email afterwards. But, you know, as an appreciation of any answers you're able to give and any insight you're able to share with us, we will put those respondents into a draw to win a gift card. So we'll be following up with you shortly. Thanks once again, gentlemen. Thank you all for attending.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Rebecca, Henry.
Thank you very much.
Bye, guys.
Keep safe. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everyone.